Hello, good evening, everyone. This is another live session for I Love Property Monday evenings, and I have the pleasure of um, hosting and inviting over KAZWEEN Marker, who is the founder and CEO of Marker Realty, very close friend and a very experienced property manager in Melbourne market. So, welcome, Kaz. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's good. We met yesterday. We spent some time together in an expo, in a property expo, and here we are again. So thank you.
No, thank you for accommodating this at a short notice as well. I know it is always challenging. We had another guest lined up, but the last minute challenges couldn't allow them. So, so we keep this session fairly informative for our viewers. This is a platform where we are honing a lot of property related discussions so that people who are following us can get a lot of value out of it. And I personally believe, as professionals, it's almost a responsibility for us to give it back to a lot of people who are interested in property related matters, because education is the first step to really get confident in their decision making related to buying their homes, investments, whatever it's related to property. So that's a bit of the introduction part, but I would be very keen to know about KAZWEEN Marker as a person, how this Marker Reality as a business shaped up in your life, and a bit of your journey. It will be uh, very interesting to know about that. Over to you.
Thank you. I came to Australia as a student, as an immigrant, and many moons ago, I was a hospitality student, and I had to take a casual job, so I took one up in security. That sort of translate more into facility management. So I had a lot of experience hands-on in my. It's a long journey, so I'm going to make it really short and give
No
it.
problem.
uh,
Let-
hospitality
yeah.
side of things, I worked in hotels, worked on cruise liners, worked as cabin crew, and there's different things. So there's a lot of training and learnings in life that has come through, and all those jobs are basically dealing with people. In Australia, I started doing security, did that for about 13 years, almost 15, still hold my security license. Very soon, from a normal casual guard, got into site supervisor, into facility management, and more into management roles, with having about 300, 400 staff to roster out, and running those kind of operations. And then when I thought I had to do something else as a something I had to do in life, I started investing already in property. Didn't know
Wow.
anything about it, you know, dabbling in the dark and see where it hits. But I knew, for some reason, I don't know why, and my parents aren't big property investors either, but just some reason I knew property was something I had to take on. Would probably through mentors and listening to things and hearing things as internet became more prevalent in our lives, we got more information more readily, and reading a few things, I started going into property. And then I was having issues with my property manager who managed my property, and then I was talking to the director and got into stuff, and I ended up working with them. And that's how I said, they said, you should come into real estate. And everyone thinks sales because that's got the big bucks. But as I've always said, and you've heard this before, and I'm happy to say it, I take sales, that's my little joke, as sales is as a one night stand. And I take property management as a long-term relationship where you build a rapport with your clients and you love it, nurture it, and grow with it. And that's not the only thing. You help them grow into build their assets, and they can buy more properties as they build more confidence, because you have the seasoned investors and then you have the rookies who start. So someone starts somewhere, they get the love, they get the confidence, and you can go. So, and I think property management came easily to me because of all the experience that I had of facility management and all the rest. I understood properties, and my dad's had a factory back home. Engineering conversations were part of life, and fixing things. And so I think it just came a lot more naturally into the nurturing, caring side. As much as I have the dominant side and the business side that people see, there's a lot of nurture and care that goes into it. And I think property managers wear a lot of hats. Wear a lot of hats, and
And
just
I
love it. So
fully endorse whatever you're saying, Kaz. I call you Kaz the Daz, and your one-liners just giggle me up. And I for sure have used your services, so I know what you're talking about.
thank
You are
you. Yeah.
absolutely a nurturing person. when it comes to really standing by people who need your help at the 11th hour. That means a lot to me.
You're welcome. You're
So,
very welcome. Yeah.
so,
So
and
it's
then,
always been to do something that I like. And this was, I have to be passionate. It's not a job. Money is a part of it, but the train, the vehicle, is just have to enjoy the journey. And I thought property management was it. So that's how I got into it.
excellent, excellent. And it's so amazing. As an immigrant, you came as a student, did hospitality, and then did all the jobs which were leading you to this position. At that point, probably we all don't realize
Yeah.
that what we are doing might end us
Turn
taking
into something
somewhere
else.
which
Yeah.
we don't even know
Yeah.
10 years later on. So all those things were shaping you up as a security personnel, fire, facility management, hospitality, cabin crews. You have done it all, Kaz. So it's amazing. Look, we wanted to get someone on this call who carries a lot of experience in property management services, because I guess as a tenant myself for a long time in my life, and then as a landlord now, I've seen both sides. The psychology shifts quite rapidly. And as a property manager and property management business you run, I guess the topic was quite topical for a platform like I Love Property, where we really want to see from both sides. I've seen the clouds from both sides now, as the song goes. That what are the do's and don'ts, uh, which you want to know as an investor as well, and as a uh, land like investor slash landlord, but also as a tenant maybe,
Yes.
because what are your important things to really know, so your expectation management is right from yourself more than anyone else. Otherwise, you are having unrealistic expectation. You don't understand the law. You don't understand the profession you are dealing with. So where all these things start and stop, I guess it's a important thing to know. So let's start with probably the investors first, and then we can look at the tenant's psychology and as a property management
Oh,
business. What are your profound knowledge experiences?
excellent. A good starting point always to know your plan ahead in hand. I met a client, in fact, just on the weekend who was down from Sydney wanting to invest in Melbourne. And
Yep.
you being in the buyer's agent space as well would agree that it's a process, it's a journey. And I always tell people want to buy, for God's sake, don't make that decision on a whim. Don't discuss this over. Discuss it, get knowledge, be informed, but go and find out the facts and make sure it works for you. It's the same disclaimer like any financial institute you call. We're going to. It's generic in nature. Make sure it suits your requirements, and that's what it is. So when you buy and invest in a property, you understand the numbers, you understand if it's a short term or a long term, and how prepared you are for it, understand the good, bad, and the uglies with it, and then so you make a full understanding and you educate a decision when you buy a property. So the investor needs to understand that first, and once he's
Yep.
decided, at the same time, I think people buy it, and then at the almost fag end of settlement coming up or the last inspection, that's when they go, oh, let me try find a property manager. And then it's probably already too late, and the property manager might come in and say, oh, but you don't have this, and you've got to do this now, you've got to do that now. And they go, oh, why didn't I know that before? Not everybody in the food chain knows everything, and that's why there are experts that come into play in different parts of the journey who then help
Yep.
you with it accordingly. And in the recent times, I'm very pleased to say that a lot of the investors have started calling early on in their journey and say, hey, I'm looking at this property. What's the rent I can expect? What do you think? Have a look at it online. Can you come and see it with me now? Do you think it's good? We ask questions like, has it been a rented property or was it owner occupied? Because it
Yep.
falls into play with all the compliance checks and things that are needed. You might as well put that into your conversation before you even sign the contract and understand where your place is. So you know the real numbers before you even start. So it's good to have to reverse engineer your final play, but know as much as you can at start. You can't know everything, uh, you
Yep.
know, but you try and find out as much as you can and make a very educated decision with your finance team, your buyer's agent, or what your plan ahead with that property is.
And for sure, I mean, it's a very important ecosystem partner for us as a profession, property
Yes.
management, because once the contracts are signed, then people are generally waiting for settlements. And it's so much different when it's a owner occupier versus a already tenanted property.
Hmm.
People don't realize there are different state laws, which you might want to know, especially you operate in Victoria. So the greater Melbourne area. Is that right? You are mostly
Yes.
in Victoria, correct?
Yes, we are licensed to operate in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yes.
So people who are buying as investors can be from anywhere in the world. Forget about just Australia these days. And it's very important to, as soon as your contracts are signed, I think that's a reasonable time to start thinking about property management
That's right.
services.
Even for finance, we work with a lot of mortgage brokers who want us to give them rental appraisals to get the finance through as well, to see what they can expect from their investors'
That's
finance
true.
journey. Yeah, so
And
it's definitely in the food chain. It will we
yeah,
do come in the start as well.
even start as well, correct. And thanks for reminding me. And in some cases they've even helped us interstate when we are buying, to go and get the videos done of the property. So they are really doing these things as a professional service as well. So it's absolutely true. So one thing is that you need to get engaged earlier in the transaction cycle of the property, so that you can support them from multiple angles. And when we talk about um, pre-settlement checklists which are needed, is there any specific thing which you want to call out? Because what I've seen is a BNP report can still go through and the property can become unconditional, but that doesn't mean it's ready to rent. And if you want to throw some light on that.
Sure. So in Victoria, we've got the minimum standards. We've got the compliance checks that are needed for every property that goes up on lease. So
Hmm.
yes, a building and pest looks at the structural side and those kind of things, but it may still not be compliant on the minimum standards. It could be as simple as having anchors on every, blind, the chains. They can't be loose. They need anchors there to make sure they're
Hmm.
secured and fastened. The locks on the doors, all those things. They make sure they meet minimum standards. The
Yeah.
drafts from the windows being lockable,
Hmm.
whatever is there. So there are a lot of other things that goes into play. So there are checks that you can do. You can have all these checks done prior
Hmm.
to settlement. You can have them done. There's no harm in knowing that. When you do the compliance checks, they might say, no, this is not meeting the 3-star standards or whatever the minimum requirements are. And you'll get a report and you might need to change the heater. You might need to do things. That gives you a chance to probably negotiate, depending how soon in the journey you've done that, and say, hey, your heater is not meeting the mark or the standard, we'll need to change it, and give me some negotiation room there. I don't know, you'd probably say yes or no on that, but these are the things you can identify and make sure the property is ready for rental. Is it all
Hmm.
always necessarily? Probably not. Depends how old the property is. The younger
Yeah.
generation properties won't be as bad and far off the mark. There might be a few
Hmm.
little tweaks that might just do it, and it won't break the bank to fix them. But
Yep.
some just might. So it's important to understand what you're buying. You can't just say, well, now go lease it out. So yeah.
Correct. And I guess the surprise element is what most humans don't like. It's not necessarily always about the money they have to pay. Mature
Yes.
investors understand that ultimately what they are paying is going in their own asset and it's adding value and going to make it a good place for the tenant. But knowing it at a last moment throws them away a little bit. And I guess this information you're sharing is worth gold, because that should educate people to engage a property manager independently, ideally, as soon as possible. All right, so that is the do's and don'ts from a state perspective, readiness perspective. In
even
terms of,
even after you buying it, Puru, you can just service all the equipment and have it up to scratch, so you know what you're actually giving out, so you don't
correct.
feel that the tenants just causing complaints, or once they've got the property, now they've got all these things they want done. It's genuinely not working. So if you don't know if it's ever been serviced, so you've lived there and you've never serviced it for that long, and now you're leasing it out, and it very often happens, more
Hmm.
often than not, that it worked with me. I lived in the house for 20 years, nothing happened. How did it
Hmm.
suddenly stop? Well, it just stops.
Yeah, it does.
It does, and it's just surprising the landlord that nothing happened yesterday. It was fine,
Hmm.
but it
Hmm.
stopped tomorrow. How
Hmm.
is that? So if you service it and keep your equipment up to scratch, and you know what's happening, you will not
Hmm.
only, like you said, put money into your own asset. It's maintained, it's looked after. again, going back to the relationship, like I said before, every relationship, you go on a date, you maintain it, you manage it. Even a car needs maintenance, needs service. Your home needs the same. You can't just let it
And
go. So
and I
that's what
couldn't
you need.
agree more. A friend of mine had a property in Point Cook, and he was in Canberra. He was an investor, and his tenant had a major bill of gas, which they reported after 2 months because they were feeling like we are turning the heater on all the time, but it's not heating enough. And then, as soon as the landlord found, my friend found, he sent someone and they found the duct was off and they got it fixed. A month after, the tenant got a massive gas bill. And they said, "Thank you, Mr. Landlord." And the landlord's perception was, I addressed it straight away as soon as I knew about it. And there was an agreement to disagreement that the property management facilitated the discussion, but they said, well, from our perspective, as per the law, the landlord needs to take it, and the landlord just couldn't get it. Why is it my responsibility? And to be found later on, there is a very clear rule which says there is a certain amount of service frequency of most appliances which has to be done in the property owned by you. If it's not serviced, then the bill goes to you because it's unserviced equipment in your property. And there are very minute things which can really blow up the bill, but at that time humans get frustrated, I guess. So you had some interesting conversations with landlords and investors, I reckon.
100%. 11 years doing this, we've had some fair bit of conversations. And over time, yes, and things have become a bit. I think when the law changed in the last few years and these new regulations came out, there was a lot of question marks. But I think a lot of the landlords are now quite savvy with the information. It's readily available. You can Google on consumer affairs. You can find things a lot more readily, easily, and I think they're a lot more educated. The owners have become a lot more educated, and that's good. It makes it easier to a big extent to work on these things. Like you said, there are finer details that they don't know, and that's why they engage us as the property experts to then find out those things. The act is somewhere up there. It's a pretty thick book. We don't know it, A to Z pat down, but we can go to the relevant sections and then find the subsections and follow it through and help explain the jargon that's in there. So we even as us in a business, at least at Marco Realty, I Pride, even just 3 weeks ago, we went and did some update sessions with a VCAT member and did more training and go for seminars and engage with other industry experts, to see and understand that everyone's in the same boat. Where are we at? What have we done differently? Same scenario. How did each one handle it differently? And what outcomes we got from it? And how can we all grow as an industry together? Because it's just an absolute thankless place sometimes to be in. And in life as well, you just sometimes feel, am I the only one? It's no different to parenting. Yeah, we've talked about this today. It's no different to parenting. We feel we're the only one with the most traumatic outcomes with our kids, but it's not. There are many facing the same thing. And it's no different to the industry. We learn and grow from each other and realize we're not different. We just need to work together and bring the best outcome for everyone. And a lot of people ask me, what do you do different as a business? Yes, the biggest difference with us as a business is we do just property management. So that's a specialty for us. However, we all should be following and are following the same act, which is the Residential Tenancy Act. So our guidance to the journey in property management should be very similar. The experiences of the property manager differs, and the experiences then help us inform our landlords at stages a bit differently. It's your experience of what you've gathered, your listing presentation when you go to meet someone the first time and bring the business on board of what you've discussed. Is it all flowers and roses and juicy and low-hanging carrots just to get the listing? Or my conversation, like I had over a coffee on the weekend, like I said to my client who was from Sydney, sent to me and introduced to me through a buyer's agent. Never met them before, but my conversation was not just all the good things. I told him the journey of what VCAT can be, what to expect. Interstate investors who are living within Australian boundaries, on Australian shores, we don't go to VCAT for them. They no longer come under VCAT. They come under magistrates court. So they shouldn't get those surprises later. But at the same interstate investor or investors living overseas, we're back into VCAT. So there are different jurisdictions fall on that as well. And it's important that they know everything later. And we don't say, oh, well, I can't go to VCAT for you. I'm going to magistrates court. And he goes, what? It's the same. It'll be fine. We know how to deal with it. but just
Hmm.
sometimes it's a bit overwhelming to know
Yes.
that this is magistrate's court. It's not like the tribunal you talked about yet, which
Yeah.
everyone talks. So yes, all these things are good to tell your landlords, or as we call them, rental providers now, and keep them informed.
Excellent. So there is a question now. We have Mridul. I think he's from Sydney. We are obliged to fulfill every request from the tenant, or how do we determine what's considered reasonable?
We refer always back to the act. We go back to the Residential Tenancy Act. Some things will not look and sound reasonable. And out of the Residential Tenancy Act, there are a few other acts that we use as guidance as well, and it's about mediating and understanding where it is. Um, Certain then there is, when you say reasonable, unreasonable, there is for maintenance. There is urgent and non-urgent. If you don't believe what one says, Google it. It's on Consumer Affairs. They'll tell you the urgent maintenance, what the timelines are, what to expect. And in the Residential Tenancy Act, if the tenant doesn't get a response within a certain period and has tried every attempt to make contact with you, there are again guidelines to it, to sort of, don't quote word for word, but go through it. And it says in Victoria, up to 2,500, the tenant can get emergency things done, provided they have made every attempt to contact the agent or the owner and not received a response. If I say, yep, I'm going to get it done tomorrow, we're working on it, we've already responded to them, but yet they go off on a whim and get something done, then that's not reasonable. That's something you can challenge. But if you're
Okay.
taking the steps to make it happen, but you can't say, I'm going to get 5 quotes when in winter heater's not working. It's got to be a lot faster. He can't have
Understand.
7 days of no heating.
Or
It's
a
got to be
leak,
done in
for
24 to
example,
48 hours to get it
or a
done.
leakage, or door break, or
Things like
whatever.
that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So you need to understand and have that conversation to make sure. And this is a very classic thing, that it does feel that it's unreasonable for us to do it, but it is the way it is. It's, yeah.
No, no, I'm sure it's an encyclopedia of information, and I'm just realizing myself that sometimes when we don't talk specifically about a certain topic, you don't realize the professionals' experience in these things, and it's amazing how much is sitting there, right? I want to touch a little bit on landlords before we turn to tenants from the do's
Sure.
and don'ts perspective. The selection of the application process, I guess you need to be reasonable. I understand that, but also there are do's and don'ts, I guess, there as well, where you can't say no on a certain basis versus uh, some guidance on that when in your experience. It would be very helpful for people.
Okay, sure. For landlords, as what we do as a business and what's in the guidelines as well, of Weekend, we use the real estate form that we get, the standard forms from real estate, and the Ignite forms that we use. They have all the questions in there. We've got reference checks that come through other agents. Uh, Things that you can request your property manager to do, or most property managers probably do anyways, is make sure they check the references and make sure they're real, because sometimes you get wrong numbers and friends or mates of mates that will stand in for you and stuff. If it's private landlords, most agents have access to RP data. As a business, if we go onto RP data and check, if Puru says he's the owner, if it's a private landlord, I'll go and check if Puru really owns ABC Street in Point Cook. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And make sure he's the owner. If he's not, then hey, Puru's name is not as the owner. And if Puru talks to me and we feel, with again putting experience there, sometimes you just feel that conversation was fluff. It didn't feel real. I was okay. If you're the owner, can you please send me your rates notice? You know, hide your whatever address now, but send me a rates. At least I know he's genuine, right?
Yeah.
And someone's there. So we try and do those with reference check for jobs. We call the employers and talk to them. And you'll know if it's a Gmail account for some big company, you know it's not a real email address, you know, because usually big employers will have a HR department that will take on these calls and help you with them. So
Yeah.
again, experience brings a lot to the table, and you just understand so much better.
Yeah.
Their income ratio, income to expense ratio, we can't ask for a full statement, but we can ask for a proof of bank balance. So at least you know someone is got enough in the savings, and he's going to be able to pay the initial bond and rent, and start that process. And
Yeah.
these things have just become a lot more in depth. Is because when COVID came, a lot of people got caught, uh, uh, unguarded, and we didn't realize people didn't have savings to be able to pay when people lost their jobs. So when people feel, how much savings do I need to have, we're not asking for $1 million there, but as long as it's reasonable for you to, in case you miss a day, things happen, can't work, especially casual employees, that they have enough to then sustain their tenancy. And we see the ratio of the rent to their income as well. If it's 50-60% of the rent's going straight towards your income, rather, is going straight towards rent, it doesn't have a lot of room left for them to live life
Yeah.
comfortably. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure you're not signing someone up for something they're not going to be able to afford, when we, again, experience tells us that he's going to struggle in a very short time, and then I'm going to make stories up for the owner. That's not what we are there for. Again, putting our expertise there, we tell the owner that the applicants, they can really look at that this looks good.
Yeah, in my experience, and you're so right. It's a collaboration, really. If I have hired a professional, I need to trust them 100%, and at least for the
Yeah,
due diligence they have done, and then
true.
work with their experience that don't go for this much rent, you will wait longer, maybe go a little bit less, you'll get more applications. This
Correct.
looks like a good profile. All those little cues have helped me a lot.
Well,
What about,
pricing the property is a big thing as well, right? You price
yeah,
it right. Just because everyone else is getting that $10 more, you may not be in the same line. Every 4 bedroom and every 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom, 2 garage is not exactly the same. You
correct.
in the buying and selling process, I would say, is you're not going to pay 800,000 for this property, which is versus this property. Why is that taking $1 million compared to this taking,
Absolutely.
700,000? They're both 4 bedroom properties, but they're not apples for apple.
Yeah.
So you know that makes that you need to price it right, and there's no point sitting on the market at top dollar,
Yeah, I mean,
not
if
leasing
you're
it out.
delaying for a month's time, anyways, you're getting behind, so you might as well
You're
do
behind
not
anyways. Exactly.
have.
Exactly. More money in your pocket is, and especially for the investors who want to start their investment cycle, your accountant will tell you, till it's leased out, you can't start claiming things on it anyways. So what's the
Yes,
point of leaving that property sitting there empty? Get
correct.
the ball rolling. You
And
got to
it's an
be in it to
important
win
point
it.
you mentioned. Yes. And quickly, one more about maintenance of things like a good garden or swimming pools and all these things. Um, is it a law which says it sits with landlord? Because I've seen it variable in different states. What's it like in Victoria?
No, it's not a law that it has to be done by the landlord. There, if you've got a pool and certain things, you've got to maintain and have the safety standards uh, in check with
Hmm.
your guards, your fences, the cycle of cleaning and everything. But
Yeah.
it depends what you put in the lease. It can be some owners are very proud
Makes sense.
and want to maintain their property, and they'll say we'll include in the rent the gardening and the pool maintenance, right? And
Yeah.
some say no, this is the cost you've got to maintain, and the tenant's got to run it in the cycle, and you put it in there that it's managed. But of course, like we said at the start, make sure it's serviced and maintained in the first place, so you've got things to prove, and make sure it's all in the condition report by your property manager from the start, because that's what takes you at the end. Work with the end in mind. If things go pear shape and you need to go to VCAT or go to court, you make sure your evidence and all your ducks are in a row in your entry report, the way you've advertised the property, everything is in line, because that's what's going to save your back when it times to come to present and have the right foot forward.
Thank you. It's interesting. It's that part of the lease can be bespoke depending on what's agreed on what's the landlord's preferences. That's good to know, because in Queensland, for example, it's a tropical area. The grass grows very quickly. It's very common to have very regular grass cutting services coming and doing it around your property, but the bill can be 1,000, 1,500 sort of number for a landlord. Whilst it's a tax claimable expense, but not everyone wants to pay that. So you want to maybe design it in your lease in such a way that the responsibility sits
Yeah,
with the
it's
consumer
not
of
a
the
law,
service.
not a law here. It's
Okay.
just depends, like you said, bespoke, and you choose at the time. A lot of them put it in the lease, in the ad, included. It's a good bonus that you don't have to worry about doing it. But yeah, it's not a law in Victoria.
Okay. No, great. Thank you. So that is the psychology or the experience you're sharing with the landlords slash investors. How about the tenants? Because technically you're representing the landlord in the service, but from a tenant's perspective, I guess it's also due diligence, duty of care, which your profession has. So a bit of highlight on that, please.
You there? Was it you or me? I lost you for a bit.
I am here. So, what did
Okay,
you
good.
listen to me
Then I
closely?
got it. I think I've got the gist of your question. You dropped out there for a sec. But let me start by saying we do represent the landlord because we're managing his property, but we still have a duty of care to the occupants as well,
Yep.
right? So, in a way, we are there for both of them. Property managers solve problems for many different people every single day. It's not just collecting of the rent. In some cases, there are some very difficult phone calls that property managers answer from tenants, and we are sometimes uh, psychological help to the tenants. We are sometimes the only point of contact certain tenants may have to the outside world. So a property
Yep.
manager is equally there for the tenants and hears
Yep.
and listens. If anybody says otherwise, of course, there's every side of, there's the side to the coin, and or there's two sides of the story, and of course it's the nature of the beast, and we can have a whinge and stuff about it. But to the honest truth is, if ever anyone says we're not, we're equally responsible for the tenants as well, as much as we're looking out for human lives. We're looking after somebody living in that property, and the last thing a property manager wants to get calls about something really doom and gloom for people, personal lives. So
Yeah.
yes, I'll start by saying we're responsible. Our duty of care is there towards the occupant as well, as much as it is for the owner. They are giving their house for someone to live in. They are equally liable for their lives and responsibility. That's why smoke alarm tests and everything was very important, where owners just don't go and change the battery themselves and say, yep, it's working. Because it wasn't just the battery, because that's one part of the alarm. It's just the audible side. What about the actual element that sets the smoke off, the smoke that triggers it? No one used to check that, and didn't
Yes.
realize that it's not going to. So you're equally liable. And that's why the insurance has come into play. So from a tenant's perspective, if we're looking, what can I say for the tenants? Just when you come and apply for a property, put your best foot forward. Right? The property manager that presents at the open, I'm looking at people. So if you come, I'm looking. We're not judging, but when you only get the application on paper, it's really hard to see it all. But if you've met them as well, you've spoken with them, you've built a rapport with them just by greeting, taking their details, talking to them this few seconds as they walk out the door, you get a feel of the person. Again, experience, price is one thing you pay, but the value is what you really get. So
Yeah.
it's not the property management dollar value of what you're paying in percentage to the property management company. It's the value, who's going to really look after your asset, because the value comes with the experience, and experience has no price tag on it.
Yes.
So that's where it makes a difference, and that's what property managers are looking out for in an application, that you're ticking all the boxes, you're putting as much information out there. Some suburbs and places do really a big turnover. They have a lot of people applying for one property. So when those
Yep.
property managers are looking at things, and this was one of an interview I did, I think a couple of years back on Channel 9 News as well, when we had 40 applications for a property in Point Cook, when the market
Yep.
was really being crazy just after COVID. And, it's just getting really hard for people to find a place. It's just like, we've got to have all the information. Out of so many applications, forget the number 40, even if we have 15 applications, we just possibly don't have the chance or the time to go through everyone in full detail. We're going to
Yep.
sift through the main things. We've got the stats and the ratios that show up on our homepage with each application. We're going to pick the best ones out of them and then go through those. And if those don't fit the bill, then we'll go to the next and the next and the next.
Yep.
So it's not that you were wrong or not there. It's just you haven't put all the relevant needed information in the first place. If I've got to go back and call and follow up, then it's a lot more hard work than somebody who's really presented himself well. You know what I'm
Yeah, and
saying?
I've heard there is a profession of tenant advocacy as well, which I've heard
Sure
lately.
is.
Where
Sure
do
is.
you do those services, or
Yes,
it's
I
not
have
part of
done
it?
them. It's not a it's not the big chunk of my business, but I have had calls where people wanted help find a place for renting, and
Yes.
I've done those as well. But that's far and few within that I really do, because those
And
can get called.
In Victoria, is it required to do a personal physical inspection to apply for a property, or no?
There's nothing like I don't think there's a real law to it. Hey, in
Okay.
COVID, who saw it?
Hmm.
We did
Hmm.
videos, we did
Yep.
photos, and we had to go with that. So if
Yep.
someone really can't see it, I try and do as me again, because I love what I do. I tell them, give me a call at the time of the open, on my WhatsApp, do a video call with me, because I'm an Android person, not a whatever. So they call me on a WhatsApp video call. A lot of interstate people or who are in the country towns can't make it to all
Yeah.
the opens every weekend. I do a
Yeah.
video walkthrough with them. That's fine.
Yeah.
They're seen through it. I give them that time of day. And if I plan that in advance, I even leave 5 minutes extra in my run for the opens. So I can
Yeah.
allow that time to let them see through it.
Yeah. And this is a very common scenario for interstate people who, or even expats coming from Singapore, UK, Canada, that they have this chicken and egg story that they want to be in the home rather than a Airbnb when they come here, so that they save a
Yes.
bit of cost, and also eventually they want to settle in by buying their own homes eventually. So they want these services for someone to really take care of the whole thing, even furnishing. A friend of mine from Singapore recently moved to Sydney, and he had 3 kids, wife, everyone. So he said, I'll go and live in an Airbnb and then I'll figure out. I said, please don't do that. Look up a expert in the area, and then they took care of everything. And he had
Yes,
a
we
very
do
good
some furnished.
experience.
We've got some furnished places as well. They're like, I've just got one apartment we put up listed this morning in the city, 2 bedroom, single bathroom, fully furnished, and
So
it's amazing. Just come in for somebody who's here for 6 months, a year, for a job, or moving in. For a couple who's coming into the country. Everything is set, and that gives you time to then look for something for yourself. You go and buy, or see what suits you in the long run. But I think it's a lot better than Airbnb it out for those few weeks. Yeah.
excellent. I'm keeping an eye on the time as well, and it just goes fast when I'm talking to you generally, and this is so interesting.
And I thought 45 minutes was going to be too long.
All right. So one another thing I really want to touch today is also the segment of property which is now getting very popular, which is rooming house, co-living space, and granny flats, and those sort of assets. Because we do buy them for our investors, so I know for sure Australia needs a lot of such assets for people to have shelter above their head. So if you can first of all tell me exactly what's the difference between co-living and rooming house, because um, even the best of the best haven't given me a right answer, but I'll let you talk about it a bit, please.
And see where I sit. I'll give it a go. From
No
what I
problem.
understand is your rooming house is a registered rooming house. It's licensed through licensing, and they're on the Consumer Affairs site. Everything is licensed through. It's a 1B classification. So your normal residence is a different classification. Rooming house is a 1B classification. There's a lot of requirements to get that. There are consultants who can help you achieve those.
Okay.
And things
Do you
have
do
changed
that?
in the recent times. Sorry?
Do you do rooming houses
I don't. We
approvals and all
manage
that?
rooming houses, but I
You
am
manage.
not the consultant. Yes, I manage them as a business and we lease
Okay.
them out, manage them for you. But I'm not the consultant who helps you get them converted. Yes,
Okay.
but I can get you in touch with those people and trades and services that know how to make it possible.
Okay, great.
The
And what about
co-living
co-living? Co-living
rooms and
spaces.
under. So rooming houses will be 4 rooms and above is rooming house, and they go
Okay.
through the council registry as well. And then anything under the 3 rooms, 2 rooms or 3 rooms is co-living that they're building. A lot of the new purpose-built co-living spaces that the house and land packages developers and builders are selling are actually being built at 1B classification. They cost a little more to build, but
Okay.
they're building those specs in. So if it does get questioned, if they've got that upper hand from the start. And then most of these places are furnished. They're done up really nicely. The
Okay.
rent includes the utilities in Victoria. That's the best way to do it, because in Victoria I can't put 50 readers and then say, okay, now your reader is example 300 kilowatt or 30 kilowatt and 30 kilowatt at the rate of 19 cents peak of peak, or that's your bill. I can't on sell or retail energy.
Yeah.
So and it's too hard. We just don't have the capacity to do it. No
Yep.
property manager should be doing it. No owner should even ask a property manager to do it. Really, it's
Okay.
ridiculous. We would just incorporate the expended expected expenditure within the rent price, and then you can
Okay.
put a cap that if it's going to cost over so much, then we're going to really look at what happens, and then you pay the difference in the bill or whatever. But
Okay.
we try and put it in. I've never really had to do that, and you won't
So,
stand a chance in VCAT if
so
you're going to
in,
argue over it.
so in simple terms, if it's a 3 bedroom co-living home, then each bedroom is furnished, and
Yep.
3 independent individuals can live, or even in one room, 2 people or family can live. That's what you're saying. And
Yeah,
they have
look,
3 different leases with you.
they can. We prefer. We look. It's very important to manage the tenants in there, and you
Hmm.
put the right people together. You just don't fill anybody to for the heck of filling them in. You
Okay.
know, family not the best space. You don't want to have a child in a small room in there living with other individuals you really don't
Okay.
know of. We
Yep.
avoid that as much as we can. I really
Hmm.
have only one place that was there, which is they were before it came to us. They were already in the house, so
Yep.
we sort of inherited them is the word, but it can be couples or individuals. In a
Okay.
licensed rooming house, there is sizes for different occupation or occupants. Sorry, whether it can be a
Yep.
single occupant or double occupant. There is difference in the size square area of the room. So not
Yep.
anyone fits anyone. I can't just put a double bed or a queen bed and say, "Yep, 2 people squeeze into there."
Okay.
There is certain standards to be maintained, and so when I look at co-living spaces, even though there's not much regulations, because I am aware of what the rooming house does, I try
Hmm.
and make sure we maintain those standards and keep it right and above board. So if anyone has to question, we're still ticking, if not all, most of the boxes.
Okay. And of course, the work for you to independently manage the leases, check-in, check-outs goes up. So
Yes,
the fees
yes.
is variable as well, I
Fee
guess.
structure is different. The fee structure for a normal house, rooming and co-living is not the same. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And because when I was a student back in the day, it looks like 2 decades now, so it's quite a lot of time. Um, we used to just have a lease in, like, say for example, in my name, and then there were 2 other rooms. I'll get a couple of other students to get in there, and they will
Yes.
pay the money to me, and I'll fix the rent. What is that called? That's called
Subleasing. Subletting.
subleasing, but it
Yeah,
has to be
subletting.
done
You
after
can get
informing.
a notice for that. The
Hmm.
best way to do it is let the property manager know. Let them know
Hmm.
Puru is on the lease. I've got Kaz and Sam coming to stay with me.
Hmm.
Here is their applications. Put them onto the lease. Let those people come onto the lease with you, because those people are then equally liable.
Hmm.
So a good way to see is those two who come in new, they're building up their rental history as well by being on a lease.
Yeah.
Secondly, they're equally liable. So if things go wrong, their name is on the bond, their name is on the notices, their
Hmm.
name is on any of the legal documents that happen. So they feel, oh my God, I've got a notice on
Hmm.
my name. Oh my God, I've got a hearing on my name. Oh my God, if there's a warrant of possession, the warrant's
Hmm.
got their name on it as well. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So then there's fear of God, if I can say, in there,
Hmm. Hmm.
that their names are on something official. And the good thing is their name is on something official, because then they've got rental history.
Yeah.
But if
That's true.
and you do that, certainly it's subletting, and you want to let them know. And
Okay.
of course, there are many people who take a lease, completely
Hmm.
move out, and give the
Hmm.
property to somebody else. And when you
And
rock
then,
up for the inspection, you don't know. That's totally wrong as well.
and what regarding, like, there's a very gray area about guests. Like sometimes the visitors can be coming and visiting and staying with their
Visitors
family.
are visitors. It's as simple as that. I don't think there's any
Right.
gray area. A visitor can be there for a month, 2 months, 3 months.
Like that.
Yes, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who have family that come and stay with them. A lot of the immigrant families have parents that come
Yes.
from overseas and stay with them for 2 3 months. They're
Yeah.
visitors. They are your parents. I mean, what is the gray area? They're my parents. They're here to stay.
No, no. If
And
they are
even if
living
they do
anything
end up staying,
longer
they
than
stay.
that, if they're living anything longer than 3 months,
Well,
six
even
months,
if they're
12 months.
staying for a year, if you've leased out a house and your mom's staying with you, what am I going to come and say? Don't let your mom stay with you?
So, okay. So, from a law perspective, if the lease is in my name and my family size can be anything,
Yes.
that's nothing to do with landlord,
No,
correct?
no,
Okay,
that's fine.
that answers. That
Yeah,
answers.
it's not that you're putting 15 other people in there and you've
Hmm.
caused so much more wear and tear on the property and you're still
Yeah.
paying the measly, that's not on. You had your
Okay.
parents visiting, they were with you for a year, whoever it
Yeah.
is. Sometimes parents do come on a 1 year visa. I know my parents used to come on a long
Yeah.
visa and stay with me, but that's okay. You're not making money out of them. It's not a commercial transaction that they are staying with you and you're taking money but not paying me any different. It's your
Fair enough.
family. You're a
Understand.
single guy. I'm a single woman. Anybody, we get married, families grow, we get pregnant, we have kids, whatever. What are you going to say? Sorry, just the one person on the list, you can't have your child there? It's not happening. It's not. That's
No
not what it
problem.
is.
Good to know. And last question regarding rooming houses is, from an investor's perspective, they always ask me, uh, will it be tenanted? Will it be occupied? What are your observations, especially around Melbourne, where you operate a lot? Do we have to really pick up the right areas and research how many rooming houses are in the area? Is there a way to check it? All these little things from your experience.
Registered rooming houses, you can. I think it goes through the council registry. The council will be able to shed light of how many other rooming houses are there if you want to do your due diligence and talk to
Yep,
them. And you want to see if you've got so many, means there is a need for it in the area.
absolutely.
And probably this, if it's close to university or something, not schools. People going to schools don't really look for it because they live with their families, the
Yeah.
minors, right? But the minor age, when I mean minors in the age minor under 18, but you want to be a university or somewhere where there is traction and the need for those rooming house exists. I've got a lot in the Sunshine area and stuff, or some of the other suburbs closer to city, Footscray. They've got a big Salvation Army office there. They've got a lot of the facilities, the government facilities there. They're looking for things around that area a lot of the
Yeah.
time. So it just depends what you're bringing to the table, and then you go from there. You can't be buying in a suburb where the general rent's not going to be on the top end, and then build something
Sure.
creme de la creme in the suburb like that and say, now get me top dollar. Well, the demographics don't fit the bill.
Sure.
So that little
And
research is definitely needed to what to
and this
expect.
is this is both for brand new rooming houses versus conversion of existing rooming house, like from 4 to 6 bedders or whatever. It doesn't
Yep.
matter.
Yes.
The same
Yes.
principles apply. Okay. So uh, it's so good to know. And you are based out of Melbourne predominantly, right? What are the areas in Melbourne you cover? Because I guess we are coming to the close of the call. I just want to make sure that if this video will be posted back for other viewers and your
Oh,
details will be posted as well, but so that you can tell a bit about the business, which areas you cover, it will be good to know for a lot of people who are following this video.
my tagline is north, south, east, or west of Melbourne. You invest and leave to us the rest. It's Kaz from Marker Realty. Thanks for having me, Paul.
Awesome. Thank you, Kaz. It is always excitement to talk to you, and we look forward to have you again at some point so that we can have a bit of repeat of these podcasts along with you. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
everyone. Thank you, Kaz.
Thanks.
Good
Have
night.
a good evening.